might say. Nobody doing it better. Y'all some lightweights. Malik Wright, up all day and all night, pushing all the buttons up to something till it's alright. He looking at it from all sides and angles. Got a stripes on his body like he played for the Bengals. Oh man, there's no one discussing it. They came, they stayed, they either did it or done it. Man, I love it, cause all they ever do is win. So kick back, relax, the team WSN.
Thank you guys for joining me for another episode of the Sit Down Morning Show with Malik Wright, presented by the Right Way Sports Network. I'm your host, Malik Wright, joined by my co-host, who's on the ones and twos, Daniel Almeida. We got a jam-packed show, a lot of stuff to get into. We've got a special guest joining us at 10:30 a.m. Zim Whodey going to be joining us on the call on the show to have a conversation regarding the Cincinnati Bengals. But before we jump into everything, do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or we upload content from the TWS studios. We literally have content coming out each and every single day. It was a lot of action in the sports world this past weekend. Didn't go live Monday because we went live Sunday night, but we're back here to talk it all through. I guess I want to start us off in boxing. And the question is simple, Daniel. Is Jake Paul the new face of boxing? That's the question being posed. And when I said the new face of boxing, I don't mean a person that is the most skillful, the most that has the most accolades or the most wins, or is just some dominant guy, but the guy that's able to put asses in seats. Is he a draw? Is he that big of a draw to where he's taking over as the face of boxing because he has the ability to promote? He has the ability to do all this crazy stuff. Daniel, roll the clip. So, yeah, that brings up the question, is Jake Paul the new face of boxing? Listen, I'll put it to you this way, Daniel. I wasn't really impressed with the performance of Jake Paul. I wasn't impressed with his performance against Mike Tyson. I wasn't impressed with Mike Tyson's performance. It really did feel like a cash grab on both sides. But I want to be clear about something. I think the numbers are a little bit skewed. You know, a lot of people are talking about Jake Paul, how he broke boxing records and viewership records because he fought Mike Tyson. He's that big of a draw. Could it just be that many people have a subscription to Netflix? Could it just be that? Could it be that many people have a subscription to Netflix that is widely popular, right? To the point where Netflix was offering up something that was included in a membership already that most Americans have. And so it was a live event. You didn't have to pay extra. You just clicked it because it was live. And I'll be honest with you, Netflix servers were ass. Terrible. I'm not buying into the notion that he's just some big draw. I think if this fight was on pay-per-view, you don't get that many views. But I think it was the fact that it was offered so much in a subscription with Netflix already, the viewership spiked up. If you put Gervonta Davis on Netflix, what do you think that does? If you put Saul Canelo Alvarez on Netflix, what do you think that does? If you put Tyson Fury on Netflix, what do you think that does? If you put Alexander Usyk on Netflix, what do you think that does? If you put Deontay Wilder on Netflix, what do you think that does? Let's go a step further. If you put Floyd Mayweather on Netflix, what do you think that does? It was brilliant by them to skew the numbers, and it was a brilliant move by Jake Paul and his team. Nobody in the boxing world took him serious. No one in the boxing world probably still takes him serious. But the simple fact that you beat a legend of the sport like a Mike Tyson, you have boxers that are coming out like Daniel Dubois that are saying, hey, we need to defend the honor of our sport, of our legends. And you have world champions now, 2 world champions, I believe, calling him out. 2 world champions calling him out. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but let me be the guy to offer up some theories right now. What if Jake Paul were to fight a Daniel Dubois? Or a Better Beef? Hope I pronounced his name right. And what if he were to win? Hypothetically speaking, that flips the entire boxing world on its head. The sport will never be looked at the same again. A YouTuber, a Disney Channel kid comes in and he turns the world on its head. And all he did was beat a former NBA player, a couple of retired MMA fighters, lost to a guy that was basically on amateur level of boxing. And then he just beat a 58-year-old Mike Tyson. I thought it was very interesting, Daniel. There was some points in that fight where it was, hey, Mike Tyson's biting his glove. And we were wondering, why is he biting his glove? Well, could it be because maybe there was an agreement in place? Maybe it was, hey, can't go too hard on it. That's something I've watched a lot of Mike Tyson fights, not because I'm that old. I'm only 29 years old. But I watch a lot of Mike Tyson fights because I'm just a fan of the sport. That's not something I've ever seen him do. My thought process is Jake Paul duped the entire world. People got to remember, Jake Paul owns a sports betting company. Meaning, a knockout was never on the table. 14-ounce gloves virtually deleted the possibility of a knockout, which is why I told everybody the fight's going the distance. Don't buy into the hype. Sports betting companies won. Netflix won. Jake Paul's popularity within the boxing world won. But make no mistake about it. This is all roping into a master plan. Jake Paul's going to get a real boxer in the ring with him soon. And I guarantee you belts will be on the line. Will that boxer be Canelo Alvarez? Canelo already said, no, not interested. But if Jake Paul's able to go out there, hear me out, Daniel. Hear me out, everyone watching live. Yeah. If Jake Paul's able to go out there and beat a Daniel Dubois, which I don't think he will, or beat a Arthur Beterbiev, which I don't think he will, well, then you could get Canelo to the ring. Then you could get Canelo to the ring. You want to know why? Because what has Canelo been striving for? Canelo already won belts at welterweight. Canelo already won belts at middleweight. Canelo already won belts at light heavyweight. He's also talked about potentially fighting at, he won belts at light heavyweight. He's also talking about getting a belt at heavyweight. He was turned back by Dimitri Bivol. So if Jake Paul were to get a heavyweight championship, Canelo would 100% step in the ring with him to fight him for a heavyweight championship because that would suit Canelo for what his goal was. Listen, everybody has a chance. Everybody has a puncher's chance, but make no mistake about it. Jake Paul is not the face of boxing. The numbers are skewed. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation. Who's the face of boxing? I think, first off, this fight, Mike Tyson was a huge part of the draw. Mm-hmm. And that's when you look at everybody who was discussing this fight. A lot of people wanted to see Mike Tyson. The only pushback I would definitely have about, being the face of boxing, like you said, I think these boxers don't respect him. I think a lot of people in the space don't respect him, but they're talking about him. And I feel that's the part where Jake Paul is the face of boxing. I feel like that's the part where he is duping everybody because, like you said, these champions, in my mind, Malik, I don't see a world where Jake Paul actually beats them. But I don't think that he fights these guys. I think Canelo is doing it right. Canelo's not paying him any attention. You have to be the one that Jake Paul calls out versus these boxers that are saying, like the better be of, you said, the champion. If he's calling Jake Paul out, Jake Paul knows he's got that fight. Mm-hmm. So Jake Paul knows he has all the options. So ask yourself, why is he not taking those fights? It's because it's all a money grab. It's all a popularity thing. You guys understand, and everybody kind of knows the type of person Jake Paul is. He is rose to fame. He has gone through many different paths, whether it's YouTube, whether it's now boxing, or whether it's sports betting company or content. This dude is a master of popularity and just getting the eyeballs on him. And that's where I'm curious to see where his career goes and where his career ends up.
I disagree.
Really?
I think Jake Paul has every intention on fighting for a belt. Matter of fact, he actually accepted Daniel Dubois' call out.
Really?
He did.
So they're fighting?
I think they're going to work to make something happen.
Wow.
Daniel Dubois called him out. Imagine a heavyweight champion calling out a YouTube Disney Channel sports betting fake boxing star for his heavyweight championship. You're falling right into the ploy. At the very least, Jake Paul's height goes up. Because guess what? Everybody could say, Jake Paul, let's be very clear. Jake Paul said a couple of months ago, said a year and a half ago, he would fight for a world championship before he turned 30. And now you have two world champions calling him out, saying they'll put their belts on the line against him. If Jake Paul loses, it's a win-win. Fuck Canelo for a second. Let's talk about it. It's a win-win. He could say, I stepped foot in the ring with a heavyweight boxing champion. Hey, I fought for a boxing championship. I fought for a boxing championship before a lot of these guys, or so-called guys, that said that they wanted to move over to the sport of boxing. Listen, and this should be a lesson to boxers. This should be a lesson to boxers. There's something to be said about you being able to sell yourself, being able to talk on the mic, being able to promote yourself beyond. It sucks. It's not like the 90s. It's not like the 80s. It's not just good enough to be good at your sport. It's not. It's not just good enough to be good at your sport. You also have to be able to promote yourself. You have to be good on the mic. You have to have actual skills in every sport, though. You want to land that big sponsorship deal, that big commercial? Can you talk? Are you dating a superstar in Taylor Swift? A lot of opportunities open up for athletes if you're able to talk on the mic. If you're able to get that PR training, you realize that, hey, if I am able to speak on the mic, I can get ahead. If not in my field, but maybe, outside of just playing in my respective sport. I can get those sponsorship opportunities. I can get those I can get all those stuff and people wanting to work with me. It's the reason why Ryan Garcia had 1 million followers before he even rose to fame in boxing. You have to be able to talk. You have to be able to have the chops. And Jake Paul, make no mistake about it. If you can go out there and knock out a former NBA player, a couple of retired MMA vets, and you rose yourself to fame through that, and you've now got world champions at the sport that you said you would conquer, guess what? Jake Paul's won. Jake Paul's already won because people are calling him out. That's the point. It's disappointing. It's sad. Imagine the actual challengers for Daniel Du Bois' challenge, or Arthur Beterbiev championship. Imagine being Dimitri Bivol. Imagine being Canelo Alvarez. Being elite at your sport. Man. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, though. If you guys could do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or upload content from the TWSN studios. I'm feeling good this morning, Dan. Feeling really, really good. Grateful to be able to do the show. Grateful to be able to talk sports. Let's talk about John Jones. John Jones beat Stipe Miocic this past weekend. And we're going to get to the NFL talk. We're going to get to the Bengals talk. But John Jones beat Stipe Miocic this past weekend. And the question is, did John Jones prove anything with the win against Stipe at 309? I'll start off by saying this, and I don't mean this to be any disrespectful. No, this is what I expected to happen. John Jones carried Stipe, it felt like, a little bit. It felt like he wanted to get more ring time in there or octagon time in there to prove that, hey, I can fight at heavyweight. I can still do some cool stuff. I'm faster than a lot of guys at heavyweight. Look at me. He did everything I expected him to do. Took a little longer, but he did everything I expected him to do. The only thing I didn't expect, I thought John Jones was going to submit him. Thought he was going to do something that nobody's been able to do to Stipe. Didn't do that. Stipe retires off to the sunset, sure. But make no mistake about it. We got that fight out of the way. John Jones talked about how he's not going to retire. Then he talked about at his press conference how he would retire. Then he talked about how he would maybe fight Tom Aspinall. Make no mistake about it. That is the fight that needs to be made. That's the fight people want to see. But I wasn't too impressed with what John Jones did at UFC 309. Not because I don't like John Jones. I like John Jones. I just expected this. I expected him to make quick work of Stipe Miocic. John, what's next? To me, I understand they say you're not champion until you defend your belt. You defended your belt against a guy who hasn't won in 3 years and now is retired. to me, it's only right that you fight the interim champion. Calling out the Derek Lewis of the world, Jamal Hills of the world, Alex Pereira's. I understand that fight makes a lot of sense for you. But let's not kid ourselves. You know what you do in that fight. We know what you do in that fight. No chance you stand with Alex. You have every intention on taking the fight to the ground and submitting Alex Pereira because you know the danger that exists standing up with a guy that walks around at heavyweight. Why don't you really test your chops? Fight a guy like Tom Aspinall. And Tom Aspinall has come out and saying, hey, you know what? UFC has already told me I'm next in line. UFC has already told me I will not be facing a Michael Chandler situation. I'll have my opportunity to beat a John Jones. We'll see. We'll see if John Duckin Jones gets in the ring with a Tom Aspinall, which, make no mistake about it, is a terrible place to be for him, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, and this is the part of the conversation. John Jones, he showed me a lot, and for what he showed me is that there is not a fighter on this roster that can beat him outside of Tom Aspinall. And I don't know if that's a shock to everybody, but I feel like Tom's really, that's what it showed me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen John Jones before. I've watched highlights. We went back and watched some of his fights. I watched him against Cyril Gane. For me, I had questions about him heading into this fight. I had questions. How's he going to look at heavyweight? Is he going to look fast? Is he washed up? This dude is definitely slower than before, but his skills are still so on point. And it really showed me that there is not another dude that can F with him outside of Tom Aspinall. And he's the only question mark. And he's the last guy that we can really say, hey, can he take John Jones's 0? Can he take his O? And I think that's the fight that you have to make. And I feel like that's, at this point, that's what it is. John Jones, in everybody else's eyes and in everybody's eyes, is the GOAT. He put on a masterclass, dominated Stipe Miocic from the beginning. And the thing that I'm holding on to, and the thing that I'm saying, and Wes Whodey said the point perfectly. Speed is what will get John Jones versus Aspinall. That's what it is. And that's going to tell us, hopefully we can get that fight. I feel like we need that fight, because the way John Jones wins that fight, if he can make Tom Aspinall look slower, if he can make Tom Aspinall push him after one round, that's how we can see John Jones beat Tom Aspinall. But there's a real world where Tom Aspinall goes in there, makes quick work of John Jones, and we're saying, holy shit, what just happened? And that's where my mind is. And that's the question mark. Yeah.
You think so?
I totally think there's a world where John Jones beats him. But
there's a world where he beats him. You said when he goes in there and makes quick work of him. He doesn't make quick work of anybody.
Who?
John Jones.
No, with Tom Aspinall. It goes one or two ways, in my opinion. I think Tom Aspinall goes in there, shows there's a clear speed difference and a clear strength difference, because John Jones, like we said, hasn't faced real heavyweights. He faced Cyril Gane, who's not a great guy on the ground. He faced Stipe Miocic, who he made him look extremely slow. Maybe that's his age. And Tom Aspinall is the real test. So I think Tom Aspinall, there's a chance where he goes in there and makes quick work of John Jones. But if not, Malik, there's a real world where John Jones does the unthinkable to Tom Aspinall, right? And goes in there. Tom Aspinall is a favorite over John Jones.
Yes, he should be, yeah.
And that should show you where the eyes of the UFC should be. They should make this fight, and we'll see.
So one thing about me, Daniel, I literally analyze these fights. I watch them during my downtime, and I really, really study, because I like to be the most prepared. I like to be the most prepared when I talk about this stuff. And I'll tell you right now, I was going through, my notes and stuff like that, and studying a little bit. I do see one way in which John Jones could hurt Tom Aspinall. And it's those front leg kicks that he does, where he stabs at the kneecap. And the reason why I say that is because Tom Aspinall had a reconstructive surgery on his ACL. And John is that type of guy where he would actually go for that. And we saw Tom blow his knee out against there. We know Tom has good leg kicks. And yes, Shafi, he will 100% close as the favorite. I agree with that. But make no mistake about it, the speed of Tom Aspinall, his ability to move in and out, his 1-2 punch, And one thing I will tell you right now: do not sleep. Tom Aspinall is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Tom Aspinall has the ability to take the fight to the ground quite comfortably, and he talked about that. How a lot of fighters who fight John Jones are scared to take him down. But if you look at the guys who have had success against him, guys like DC in their first fight, guys like Gustafsson, they were able to take John Jones down. That was an element of surprise. Put John Jones in a place where he's not used to being. You know, what I'll say to this is I will stand on business the same way I've stood on business for Ilia Topuria against Volkanovski, the same way I stood on business for Ilia Topuria against Max Holloway. And I was called idiots. I was called all that kind of stuff. Hear me out. Believe me when I say this. And John Jones is my GOAT. But make no mistake about it. Tom Aspinall would make quick work of John Jones. And the talk that John Jones is giving is very similar to the talk he gave when people were talking about him and Francis Ngannou. UFC has to pay me a big bag. It has to be worth my while. And Sean Brennan, no need to be a smartass. The point I was trying to make there, brother, is, John Jones 100% will look at where Tom Aspinall has had issues in the past, not necessarily from a skill standpoint, but from an injury standpoint. And he will look to take advantage of that. Where most fighters will say, hey, let me try to do something else with Tom. Let me try to wrestle Tom. John will try to point to that reconstructed knee surgery that happened 2 years ago and try to make that a point of emphasis. My point is, I don't think he'll get the shot. Stipe landed on John. Stipe was able to swell John's eye up a little bit. What do you think Tom will do?
And Stipe just couldn't corral him. He didn't press forward.
People like to say, oh, we don't know about Tom's casting. I've seen Tom's casting. I've seen it in boxing. The fact of the matter is, these guys are just not being able to withstand his punches. It's crazy how the pendulum swings. It's crazy how the goalpost moves, though, for a guy like Tom Aspinall. Not in his favor, though. People were talking about, I remember months ago where people were saying, almost a year ago, people were saying Sergey Pavlovich, who was the scariest fighter at the time, was going to knock out Tom Aspinall. And I told everybody Tom Aspinall would win that fight. You don't know what you're talking about. Tom was the underdog, if people don't remember. He was the underdog going to that fight. And I cashed very, very big on that fight. And I'm going to tell you right now, Tom Aspinall was able to go out there, beat Sergey Pavlovich, knock him out in dramatic fashion in the first round. I don't think John Jones, from a skill standpoint, sees a clear path to victory for him against a guy like Tom Aspinall, which is why he's calling for the Alex Pereira fight. He sees a path to victory. He knows he could take him to the ground. Francis Ngannou was a scary fight for him because you have to close the distance in order to take Francis Ngannou to the ground. Everybody knew Francis wasn't a strong wrestler, but he was working with Kamaru Usman at the time. John knew the risk involved with trying to close the distance and fight a Francis Ngannou, which is why he requested the UFC pay him some astronomical number. And isn't it crazy? Francis Ngannou leaves the UFC, then John Jones immediately comes to terms with the UFC, fights Cyril Gane, a guy who has no grappling and many deficiencies in his grappling game. He was able to submit him and get him out of there quickly. To me, that says a lot about John Jones. That says a lot about John Jones. But let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content from the TWSN studios. Listen, the Bills were able to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, knocking them off their throne. And now it brings the question, are the Bills the new team to beat in the AFC? First and foremost, let me just say I'm happy for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
I'm happy for the Buffalo Bills because this was a big weight off their shoulders. Beating the Kansas City Chiefs was something that they needed to do because we talked about it. We talked about how the mental advantage where it was on the Chiefs side. But do you remember what I said on the show last week?
Mm-hmm.
I thought the Bills were going to win this game.
Yeah.
I had all the makings for the Bills to win this game, and so many people ran them off. So many people believed that they had no shot. But the Bills do the unthinkable, Daniel. And now it brings up the question, in your eyes, do you think this Bills team has newfound energy, newfound life because they were able to stop the undefeated season of the Kansas City Chiefs? Do you think this Bills team is for real? Do you think they're different from the one that we've seen in years past?
I don't think that they're different. I don't think so. I think this is a team that has always been right there. This is a team, in my opinion, you go and look at that Kansas City Chiefs game in the playoffs. That team, and it sounds crazy, obviously hindsight's 2020, that team could have won the Super Bowl. This team has the makings to potentially make the Super Bowl. I just, once again, I don't know if they can consistently beat this Kansas City Chiefs team. And we've seen this time and time again. We've seen them do this. This was what? They're 4-1 in the regular season against the Kansas City Chiefs, 3-1.
Mhm.
What happens come playoff time? Somehow, some way, the Chiefs find a way to beat them. They're right there, though. They're right there. Do I think they're on the same tier as the Ravens? Yeah. Do I think they're on the same tier as the Steelers? Yes. I think everybody has a real chance in this AFC this year. I think everybody does. The real contenders, I would say, I think the Steelers are fine. I think the Steelers are good. They're a gritty team. Once again, I still don't believe the Steelers can rattle off 3 straight victories in the playoffs. When we discuss the playoffs, though, I think the Bills are right there. And I think the fact is that their offense it's all about Josh Allen, man. It really is. They've got good weapons. Khalil Shakir is fine. Dawson Knox is a fine backup tight end. James Cooks is a fine running back. They're not great anywhere, though. That's the thing. They're not. But they've got the X factor in Josh Allen. We saw that time and time again. Who's the one that you count on in third down? Who's the one that you count on fourth down? Josh Allen's the reason why they won that game.
Mhm.
And he's the X factor. Same way we talk about a Joe Burrow escaping the pocket. Same way we talk about a Lamar Jackson making crazy plays happen. You know, the play that he made against the Bengals. Oh my God, this is something we've never seen before. Josh Allen makes those type of plays too. And he is the quote unquote X factor for this Buffalo Bills team. So I wouldn't say that they're on a pedestal and the team to beat in the AFC, but I think they're contenders, man. And I think it's really going to come down to them getting over that hurdle and Sean McDermott finding a way to beat Andy Reid in the playoffs.
Mhm.
That's what it comes down to, because this is a team that has always had the makings. And first off, we have to give the Bills props, right? I was the person who was calling them out saying, hey, 2 years ago, you got to clean house. Last year, you got to clean house. But time and time again, this is a team, I believe, for the past 5 years, maybe even the past 6 years, they've won 10 games every single season. That's consistency.
Mhm.
They are a team that is super consistent, and that is with a ton of turmoil, firing your defensive coordinator, getting a new offensive coordinator, getting so many new pieces, getting rid of Stephon Diggs, this offseason, cleaning house on your defense, and somehow, some way, you're what? You're 8-2? You're in first place or right there for the number 1 seed in the AFC. So props to the Buffalo Bills because they've done the unthinkable. Now it's going to come down to making it happen in the playoffs, because this is what's going to come down to Sean McDermott's job. This is what's going to come down to his future is, hey, can you make it happen in the playoffs? Because he's been doing it in the regular season. They've been consistent. They just can't get it done in the playoffs. So, Malik, I think that they're contenders, but have they shown me enough to say that I'm super confident in them to make the playoffs or make the Super Bowl? I'm not super confident. They're a good team. They're a contender. It's the same way I think of the Baltimore Ravens right now. The Baltimore Ravens are a damn good team, but
So,
they're 7-4.
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So do you think the Chiefs are?
No, I don't think the Chiefs are way ahead of them either. I think that there's no clear-cut team in this AFC right
I think
now.
Patrick Mahomes is playing really average this year.
Yeah.
That's what I think. So for me, it's like I'm waiting for a team to step outside the norm, right? That looks a little abnormal and that are able to put games together.
Mhm.
To me, I was impressed with the Bills personally.
Yeah.
More so the mental fortitude, because it takes a lot for a team to have your number. That run, that call for Josh Allen at the end to call his own number and then run, have a 25 plus yard scamper, maybe maybe a little longer, or touchdown, breaking tackles, a whole 9 yards. That was just wanting to. That's putting the team on your shoulder. Maybe they'll buck that trend. Maybe they could buck that trend of a coach and a quarterback being together for as long as they have, having success. Who knows? But I was really, really impressed with Josh Allen. I think that said a lot about Josh Allen. I think he showed up in such a big way. I know Zim is going to be joining us here shortly. If you guys could do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or upload content. Let's discuss Kevin Stefanski. Daniel, is Kevin Stefanski on the hot seat? Apparently, there's been a lot of chatter, a lot of rumors buzzing that Mike Vrabel has been being looked at as the potential successor to Kevin Stefanski. And let me be very, very clear, really, really quick when I say this. And I know people, you guys know I cover the Bengals and all this good stuff. But let me be very, very clear. I think Kevin Stefanski is one of the best coaches in football.
Yeah.
2-time coach of the year. I think that the Cleveland Browns would be making a mistake if they moved on from him. You asked him to go out there and turn water into wine with a quarterback in Deshaun Watson who forgot how to play the quarterback position effectively. You asked him to go out there and field a winner. That's difficult to do. But one thing I will say is I've been very, very impressed with the way Kevin Stefanski has approached the job with all the chaos within that organization year in and year out. If they fired him, some team is going to get an opportunity to hire him as their coach. And I don't think Kevin Stefanski has to earn his chops as a play caller or anything like that. I think he'd be a head coach again, because a lot of people look at the Cleveland Brown situation and look at it and say it's unstable. It's a place where, you have to be Superman almost to really succeed there. And when I look at it, I think there are two coaches that could potentially be on the out this season that I see as home run gets. Kyle Shanahan and Kevin Stefanski are two guys that I believe, and two guys that I believe that could really help turn an organization around. I'm a believer though. I'm a believer in Kevin Stefanski. I still believe that he is a good coach in the National Football League. And hell, they'd be making a stupid mistake, but I do believe that Kevin Stefanski is going to hot seat. I don't know if he survives the season, Daniel.
Yeah.
And you know how I feel about coaching, firing coaches mid-season, but I don't know if he survives the season, to be honest with you. What are your thoughts?
We're talking about a head coach, and I'm with you. Not just a one-time, a 2-time coach of the year at the NFL level. And we're talking about him getting fired. This tells me a lot about the organization. Kevin Stefanski, I think, yes, he is on the hot seat for right or for wrong. There's a lot of buzz, and this is a simple notion. This is kind of a message that, hey, respectfully, life isn't fair. And what I mean by that is he is potentially getting outed for something that's not his fault, right? He was a huge proponent of bringing in a Mike Vrabel behind him, right? Has had a long relationship with him, brought him in. They've raved about Mike Vrabel in the building, and now Vrabel could be the guy that potentially replaces him, right? Him and the GM, Andrew Berry, have a good relationship. Everybody in the front office, people, all the fans are calling for Kevin Stefanski's jobs, but it struggles. I really struggle to see how Kevin Stefanski is the sole reason why they're losing. And that's the part that sucks. And that's the part the Bengals or the Browns front office and ownership have to ask themselves, hey, what good are we doing by firing a Kevin Stefanski? And that's the part that sucks, Malik. They've got, 2-3 wins? And I just think it would be a massive mistake to fire Kevin Stefanski for a problem that goes and is rooted deeply in the organization, is rooted deeply in the decisions that they've made about their quarterback, about their offense. Because like I said, the dude just won coach of the year and we're talking about firing him. So yes, I think he's on the hot seat, but this dude is, in my mind, one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. We've seen him take and turn quarterbacks around, and we've seen him field a sufficient offense and field a consistent offense time and time again. So while the product they may be putting on the field is not great right now, you have to applaud the head coach, and maybe not even applaud him, but you have to give him some wiggle room to where, hey, this dude has dealt with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. This dude has dealt with multiple different quarterbacks, dating to last year, dating to the year before, and he's had to somehow make it work. Made it work last year and isn't making it work this year. So Kevin Stefanski is a great football coach, and he's just having a poor season. But like I said, for a dude to win 2 Coach of the Year awards, I think this is a massive mistake for the Cleveland Browns. The only way this turns out well for them is if they hire Mike Vrabel and Vrabel is fully the guy that they want to go behind and support.
And I don't even think that's like turning it around for them, right? I think that's you're going from a guy that's proven he could be a very good head football coach in the National Football League to a guy that has also proven he's been a good football coach in the National Football League. It's a lateral move, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know if Vrabel changes too much, and there's a lot of dysfunction within the organization. You got to even ask yourself, does Andrew Berry, the general manager of the Browns, survive this? Because this Kevin Stefanski was a him hire, and I feel like the owner, Jimmy Haslam, I feel like they're quick triggered often, and I feel like this is a bad decision. They have to look at themselves and say, hey, you know what, we made a bad decision by investing in a quarterback that no longer has it anymore. And you got to be able to cut your losses. So sometimes simplifying it without trying to go out there and reinvent the wheel is the right place to be.
Yeah.
And I feel, in my honest opinion, that the Browns would be making a huge mistake in one, but it'd be right on par for what the Browns have done throughout their career, throughout their history. You know what's funny? People often laugh at me when I say this, but I feel like when the Browns were the most scary was when they had, what's my man's name? The general manager there. He was the Kansas City Chiefs general manager, John. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. He was the general manager, but he was willing to go out there and make moves and be aggressive to try to field a competitive team.
Dorsey.
John Dorsey. Yeah. When John Dorsey was the general manager of the Cleveland Browns, I was like, wow, okay, this team, this team could definitely do something. But it's one of those things where it's like Baker Mayfield looked like shit with them, and then he leaves, and then he's able to win a division. He's able to do some good things. Not saying that guy will ever win a Super Bowl or anything like that, but it showed that he wasn't the issue in Cleveland. Maybe it's just the organizational structure. I have no idea. But I could tell you one thing. The Browns are in a situation where I feel like they keep going round and round again. If you guys could do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel. If you're new here, turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or upload content from the TWSN studios. As promised, we got to get into our Bengals talk. And it wouldn't be a Bengals talk if I didn't have my brother joining me. Zim Whodey will be joining us live for the discussion. So let's bring him in, Daniel. What's going on, man?
Good morning. It feels like afternoon. How are you doing today?
Doing good, brother. I'm doing good, man. I'm going to be honest with you, man. I had to gather my thoughts for a little bit, man.
Yeah.
And I'm happy I didn't go live yesterday because I wanted to let it settle in for a little bit. Me and you, so we could talk about this and really assess and give our analysis of the game. Zim, this is actually perfect, man, because we often talk about it. You like to take your time, you like to wait for things.
Yep.
I have a lot of thoughts, but I want to hear your thoughts, brother. I want to hear what your thoughts were, not only on the game. But we have a big discussion right now about what the Bengals need to do moving forward. Let me just say this right now for people that are listening for the very first time. This is not a show where we're going to say yes, man. We're going to be yes, man. We're going to tell you what you want to hear. This is a show where we're going to be honest with you. We're going to talk about the things that maybe Bengals fans are thinking, but they don't really have someone to say it. I'm not interested in protecting relationships. I'm not interested in protecting who I might offend. That's already going out the window this season. You're going to get a real honest conversation here right now. And Zim, the floor is yours.
You put me on the spot, man. I don't even know where to begin. I can say that, me and my partner Ace, I do that show with him and Cincinnati. We've been through this fire before. It just looked a little different. I hope we don't have a lot of Dalton lovers in here today, because I was one of the people before. People remember me from then. I was on Instagram now. I wasn't on Twitter. I just got on Twitter 2020, 2021. But I was really big on, like the Tony Dungy thing, moving on, and it's just time for certain people. Marvin Lewis, it was just time for certain people. And I feel like in its totality, I've been assessing. I didn't come on any of these shows. They try to classify me as like some radical. I didn't come on over here and suggest that people should get fired or anything like that. I'm evaluating as I go. But after that press conference, after the game, and Jamar Chase says, yeah, I still believe in my teammates, but then isolates that and then says, hey, we got to coach and stuff. You need to go ask the coach why we ain't winning these games and stuff like that. And then the Joe Burrow question, they asked Joe Burrow something very similar. And I'm paraphrasing, but he does say, they asked him about Zach Taylor, and he said, yeah, maybe not. You know what I mean? That's not a ringing endorsement by the franchise guy, Joey Franchise, for the head coach. And Zach Taylor, and the reason I brought up Andy Dalton, Zach Taylor reminds me a lot of Andy Dalton. I think a lot of people are very thankful for what he's done. Went to a Super Bowl, didn't win. We were very thankful that Dalton took us to the playoffs consecutively, right out the gate. all these different things. And people like me, I've just been chilling, getting the information. I like Zach's playbook. I think it's a PR, all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
But the guys are not motivated right now. And I could tell that they look defeated. There's a video of Joe Burrow I posted, somebody posted on TikTok of him just walking off the field. He's not the same guy anymore. And we watched him get older right before our eyes. I mean, he's 28 years old now. He's not like some young, the honeymoon has been over.
Mm-hmm.
And the realization is that game ended and we didn't win. A lot of people said that the Bengals window, and a lot of ops talk to me because they hate my guts because I'm always so positive and I'm always telling them all this great information about the Bengals. So they always come back to me. But they do have truth, and sometimes they'll say things to me and say, Joe Burrow, he choked in the playoffs. He choked in the Super Bowl. And I'm like, what? And I got all the stats. I got all these different things to prove, and I got all these different things that I can always cook them with.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe that the Bengals window closed when when his wrist got hurt. And they just been going on the fly right in front of our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we knew, I mean, come on, bro. It's nose tackle position, takes time to go. McKinley Jackson, Chris Jenkins, that's not Super Bowl contention. That's like making it try to work along the way. Hopefully you get some with it. Stopgap showed in rankings. Like the writing's been on the wall for us as fans.
Mm-hmm.
We just weren't trying to accept it. And I think the realization of this was a rebuild, so to speak, year. But then the part that frustrates me is the reluctance to play a lot of those draft picks.
Mm.
It really messes. It doesn't match up and it doesn't mirror up with the front office. There's a video currently right now. You know, we were in the suite next to, Mike Brown and the fam.
Mm-hmm.
They got one where the granddaughter looks very, very, very irate. I don't want to classify I don't hear what she's saying, but she looks very, frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody's at that frustration point. And I know that there are going to be a lot of old Bengal fans that's going to be like, you don't know how they were like, listen, Joe Burrow puts a different institutional pressure on your organization that the Bengals have never felt. You never had that with Carson. You never had that with Kenny Anderson. You never, like, social media and all this stuff didn't exist. Mm-hmm. The amount of Joe Burrow posts and stuff every single day of my life online is insane. The pressure that he puts on your front office is very different. There's nothing you could show me that has anything close to what Joe Burrow puts on the pressure on the front office. Right. If Zach Taylor does not make the playoffs, which would take him to win 6 wins straight, have a 99% chance of making the playoffs. Mm-hmm. They win 6 straight games, which is insane. Whatever. If he doesn't make the playoffs, I don't think he's here. And I think that's where it's at. The front office stuff, those are all pipe dream stuff, like sell the team and da-da-da. I don't think none of that's going to happen. I ain't here to say that. But I do think that the head coach is gone if they don't make the playoffs. And that's my bigger takeaway. The game, I do have some thoughts that I think a lot of people aren't gonna like, but
let's talk about. I want you to continue talking about those. I want you to keep going. You're cooking right now.
You tell me what you think. You tell me what you think about that. Like, do you feel like Zach Taylor's on a hot seat? Like, I think the seat's super hot. Where if he doesn't make the playoffs, like the players are speaking.
Mm-hmm. We did a show a couple of weeks back, and I said Zach is safe unless you get 2 people talking in such a way that the organization feels like they have to act. And those 2 people are franchise cornerstone pieces, people like a Jamar Chase and a Joe Burrow. And you were right on par. Joe Burrow said, as far as Zach Taylor's comments, that he still believes this team could make the playoffs. He says, and I quote, I hope. I hope. That was his response. That is unlike any response you've ever heard from Joe Burrow. You've got Jamar Chase saying, ask the coaches, ask Zach. I don't call plays. I just play football. They're speaking out without speaking out. Let me be very clear when I say what I'm about to say right now. Zach Taylor has lost the locker room. That is my honest assessment. Zach Taylor has lost the locker room, and I waited to hold judgment. But you got Trey Hendrickson. Obviously, he played it off after the game, slapped Zach Taylor's hand down, got Jermaine Pratt yelling at Cam Taylor Brick, coaches having to go over there and having to calm him down. Yeah, this is what losing the locker room looks like. And you know what's crazy? For all the people that are coming out saying, fire Lou, I thought it was very interesting that Trey Hendrickson said we have a great defensive coordinator. I'm very clear when when I hear people talk and what their assessment is. He said we have a great defensive coordinator in Lou who made the necessary adjustments at halftime to put us in a position to win. You don't hear that same sentiment when it comes to Zach from his players. And this is a team that's ranked very, very highly within the NFL. But I think they're telling you that, and I thought it was very interesting what Trey Hendrickson said, this is the NFL. We're all intense. I don't need somebody trying to calm me down. And I think that I really believe that the Bengals are in an interesting spot here. But let me be very clear. I'm very fortunate enough to be a fan of two teams that have done a lot of winning within my lifetime. And one of them are the Boston Celtics. The other one is the Alabama football Crimson Tide. And what a championship organization looks like is never settling. It's never settling. And I go back to when Brad Stevens was the head coach of the Boston Celtics and they weren't able to break through. They didn't fire him necessarily, but they basically fired him without firing him, moved him up to an organizational role, hired Joe Mazzulla, went out there, was aggressive, realizing that this championship window that they're in was right now. And they went out, got Kristaps Porzingis, and they left no stone unturned to try to put together a championship roster. That's what it looks like. That's a team that was winning a lot with Brad Stevens. Right, Daniel? They were doing great with Brad Stevens. They were winning a lot of games in the East. And you know what they said? That's not the guy to take us over the top. Mm-hmm. That's not the guy to get us over the hump. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to tear that shit up. We're going to bring in a different guy, and we're going to hopefully make changes. And if Joe Mazzulla wasn't the answer, they probably would have moved on from him too. The expectations are much higher. When you have a Joe Burrow, the expectations become much higher. I grew up in New Jersey where I saw Giants have a lot of success. Tom Coughlin win 2 Super Bowls with them. Tom Coughlin had a string of losing seasons. They fired him. Bill Belichick, we obviously know what he did with the New England Patriots. They stopped winning. They moved on from him. Point I'm trying to make is you shouldn't tie yourself.
I'm in DC. I'm sorry to cut you. I'm in DC. No, the same thing. They did the same thing to Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs won a Super Bowl, came back, had a couple not even bad seasons out of here.
Yeah. When you have a franchise, when you have a transcendent franchise player, luckily in the Bengals case, you probably have 2, maybe 3, in Trey Hendrickson, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow. When you have that, right? When you have that and you're not winning, I think that creates pressure amongst everybody within the organization. I think everybody enters into a new mindset that, hey, we're losing here. Right now, and this was my fear with the Chargers loss, and I said this, Zim. If you lost to the Chargers, I don't know how Zach Taylor galvanizes the troops and gets them all ready to go into battle for the remainder of the season. I think you really do lose the locker room because let's be honest with ourselves. If the Bengals were to go on, right, let's say beat the Pittsburgh Steelers and then win a couple of more games right here, you're winning games against teams with losing records like the Titans, like the Browns. What type of confidence does that instill into these players that are elite? What does that say to them? What we're witnessing before our very own eyes. And let me be very clear. Zach Taylor is an awesome community guy, right? He goes to bars, hands out balls and all that good stuff. And people love him because I got a picture with Zach Taylor. He's very approachable. But we're talking about championships here. We're talking about a team that should be up there with the Chiefs, with the Bills, that has the talent to do so. And I'm sorry, when things start to come undone, you have to look at the head coach. Not only that, from an organizational standpoint, you have to look at a Duke Tobin of the world. my thought process is changes are on the horizon. I don't even listen. I would love to see the Bengals go on a run right now, win 6 straight games, and make the playoffs. But I gotta honestly also ask myself, does that do more damage to a degree? Hear me out. Does that? Because
I'm with
for
you.
me, how you end the season is so important. It will tell me a lot about how this team views their head coach. That's my thought process. If they're able to end the season strong, it tells me, hey, Zach Taylor hasn't lost this locker room. They still want to fight. They still are fighting hard for him. They still believe they could win. But I also ask myself, if you get into the playoffs and you face a Ravens, you face a Bills, you face a Chiefs, what does that look like? Is that it's that old quote. What is it to gain the world but lose your soul, right? What is it to make the playoffs?
If you get in the playoffs, though, you got to think, though, the Bengals will be scorching hot by then. Though.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So
six straight wins.
Like, are you afraid to go against the Ravens defense again? I'm not.
No.
Are you afraid to go against the Chiefs? Like, I don't think that I don't think they had the offensive firepower to hang with us, honestly. I know that might sound crazy to people. The Bills, I think, are better, a lot better than what they had been. But I know that Lou's cooked up some good stuff for him, for Josh Allen. The Texans, I think, Stroud has been figured out a little bit more this year. Their defense is very good. There are some matchups that I think the Texans would give the Bengals like a bunch of problems. I do think that.
But there was a point in time, Zim, where we didn't give a fuck who it was.
Right.
The Bengals could go in there, could go into your house.
If you get me in, it's like you're talking about the Bengals winning 5 or 6 games out of the next 6 games. So you're talking about a scorching hot team, just like the Bengals went 10-7 and went to a Super Bowl. So in that regard, sure. But if they were to win like a game, lose a game, and to like say they lose 2 more games within the next 4 or something like that, I'm like, once the Bengals get to 9 losses, Burrow, Chase, T, everybody shut down. There's no reason to play any of those dudes. Why would you risk Joe Burrow, to even see? That's another reason why I would say that Zach Taylor will be gone. Because once you get the 9 L's, you're mathematically out of it. Right. And at that point, there is no chance to Joe Burrow rah the troops. Right. Because you wouldn't put his wrist, his health in harm's way. To me, that'd be stupid. Like, I don't know how you feel about that. I wouldn't play him or Chase. We're not chasing no triple crown. We ain't doing none of that if they had 9 losses. So in my mind, that's the recipe of the team is over, and now you're just playing rookies in there or whatever, and then the coach is fired. Yeah, like that. To me, it's that simple to me, bro. The Lou, I will say this: we hadn't talked about Lou, right? I read a comment. Had that game when it was 24-6, had they not seen the defense fight for them and get back in that game, I think we'd be having a conversation about Lou going across the screen. And I've been a big Lou guy all this time. But there's a lot of things this season that have made him, whether right or wrong, it's cool to trust your guys like a Von Bell or whatever. But then when you see battle play outside of it, you're like, why would you wait that long? The Zach Carter's like playing that long, and then you get a guy that's about as fat as me and Lawrence Guy coming off the couch out playing this dude. I know we had the injuries and everything like that, but like it's just a major indictment on Tobin, Lou. The front office isn't mirroring up. Why would you draft 11 guys and then you're not playing like a Dejon Anthony or something like that? To me, I was looking at a graphic of the Chiefs the other day where they draft, and I hate bringing them up because I don't want to be like the Chiefs. I ain't trying to compare myself to the Chiefs. I don't even want to talk about the Chiefs. But their draft with Leo Chennault and all them dudes or whatever they had in there, it's a masterclass. But the key function of that draft is that once they knew that they paid Pat Mahomes, they knew that they weren't going to be big players in free agency. Right. The Steelers, all these teams that everybody's saying is so much better than the Bengals, none of these teams are big players in free agency. Like I hope everybody knows that. And so the Chiefs, remember, they had to get away from Snead, they had to get away from Tyreek Hill. all these different things. But the one thing that they did when they go to these drafts, they play those dudes right away. Because you have to figure out, like somebody taking a victory lap on me earlier today was like, well, Burton, I mean, what's up with your boy? I'm like, I would have liked to see that week 1, you know, Burton, like no T. Higgins, run him out there and like, let me see what you got, bro. And they did a piece on this with Spags one time. He said, I used that regular season as a gauntlet for all of these guys, young dudes and stuff. I like to see what I got. And then get them right. And then by the time we get to the playoffs, they done been through the fire.
Right.
You're throwing these dudes in now after all of your plans have failed. You went out there with Trent Irwin and Charlie Jones for weeks. And now you go week 11 and like, yeah, let's see what you got, Burton. Like, you should have did that week 1. And then you would have said, okay, this is what I think he does really well. This is what I don't. Okay, the time is a little off. Let's work on this. After you never even really gave yourself a shot. And they're going to do the same thing all over the roster with like Dejon Anthony should have been like getting snaps. How you draft Tanner McLaughlin and Eric All goes down and we're still watching Tanner Hudson? What does Tanner Hudson do for, like I said, the window closed when the risk, you know, the window's always open with Joe Burrow. Let me rephrase that. But the current roster window had closed with his wrist. Tanner Hudson does nothing to help out what you're doing right now in the totality and the functionality of us moving forward as a team. You're not able to evaluate. I don't even know what Tanner McLaughlin is. What is he? Do we know? How would I know if I don't get him out there? Bro, it's sickening, bro. Like, and so they've done that all along. Think about Chase Brown. It took Zach Moss getting hurt for them to give Chase Brown full reins. And guess what? We're still looking for another secondary running back. You traded a 7th round pick. You could have easily drafted a Braylon Allen 5th round, 6th, or Ray Davis, all these running backs that are doing well in the NFL. You could have easily drafted one of them dudes. You give up a 7th round pick. You give up your franchise running back, right? Top 10 running back in the NFL, 2nd all-time in yards. You give him up for nothing. You get a 7th round pick. And then you come back later on, you're trading a 7th round pick, and then Khalil Herbert doesn't even get a one carry? Right. Like, what are they doing? Like, none of this makes sense. The biggest indictment on when I was saying with the roster stuff, Cam Taylor-Britt, I was very high on coming into the season. I said he would give up a lot of plays. I like to own my L's. That's a guy that I thought was going to play really well this year. So I don't fault the front office. But how could you go 11 weeks of playing this dude? He is the worst giving up yards in the National Football League. He's given up the most touchdowns at 8. And then Newton comes in for 5 minutes and already is that makes Lou look very bad in his assessment. If you can go that long and then you're just like, well, I'm going to go with my guys. And then a guy comes out off the bench that's been sitting there for 11 weeks. All of a sudden, he played better. He probably played better in the 10 minutes that he did in the Chargers game than maybe Cam Taylor-Britt has played all year. It's rough out here, man.
No, you're speaking facts right now. And I think the conversation, and Dan, I want to get you in on the conversation too, my man. You've been kind of quiet this shot.
No, I've been letting y'all talk. Yeah.
Where do the Bengals go from here? I think a real conversation needs to be had here, but Dan, I'm gonna let you start us off.
Yeah, I think just 2 things I want to touch on real quick, and I think these are the 2 most valuable things that you guys both brought up. The assessment of the players, I feel like that's a organizational flaw, and I feel like that is the thing that we can really pencil in and say, hey, that has to change now, right? I think that you look at these other teams and you see, and I thought you brought up great, why the hell is Burton playing now? Right. And the Ravens game is a perfect example of that. The Ravens game in a typical season, you can lose that game and you're fine. Right. You're good. But that was a dire game. And you play Jermaine Burton, the most snaps he played all season long, 2 4th downs, missed balls to him. Let that happen in week 1. Let that happen in week 2. Let that happen in week 3. And I feel like that's the perfect place where this coaching staff has to take blame for that. And that is whether that's their mindset of, hey, I'm going to roll with Trent Irwin because he gives me the best chance to win in week 2. He gives me the best chance to win in week 3. You're talking about the future. And this is something all Bengals fans can look at and can pencil in and say, hey, This has been a consistent theme time and time again with this Bengals coaching staff. And how do you move forward from this? I think that this is a different conversation than every single season because, Malik, we talked about this. Under Zach Taylor, they've been great out of the bye. They've been exceptional. The past 4 seasons, I believe they're 3-1 out of the bye. If you lose this game against the Steelers, you are on a 3-game losing streak, and this locker room is going to be hell. And I feel like you have to let the chips fall where they may at that point, right? You have to go out here and you have to show some fight. For all the Bengals fans right now, we're discussing what is the outcome of this season. Are we wishing for the draft? No, we're wishing for wins, but we have to take each game as it is. And I'm going to be honest, if they lose that Steelers game, there's a real chance. We've already seen what Jamar Chase said. We've already seen what Joe Burrow said. And I feel like for the Bengals fans who are defending Zach Taylor, we've talked about Zach Taylor in serious positive light. But if your star player, and this is how I take it, if the star player is saying something about the head coach, I've got to believe that there is some merit to it. So I feel like that's where my mindset goes with this, is saying, hey, how do they respond? Because that game against Steelers, that is a fucking tough game out of a bye week. We're talking, and I don't know the logistics. I don't know if the Bengals players are in the locker room right now or practicing all week, but there's a chance where some of them are on vacation, right? It's a bye week. So what is the mindset coming back next week off of the bye week? You just had a week to sit on 4-7 off of 2 straight losses. What's the mindset? What's the locker room like? Because I know Mike Tomlin's going to have them boys ready. So they're going to come into Bengals Stadium at home. And how do you look in that game? Because I feel like as bad as it is now, as bad as we view this now, it's about to get a lot worse if you go out there and lose to the Steelers. That puts you at 4-8.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think that the one thing you can kind of tip your hat to is every single time they come off of a bye week, they typically come out looking like a little bit of a different team. They tend to figure some stuff out. I could point to a lot of stuff as Zim can, as you can. You should have went out and added a cornerback after Dax Hill went down. You should have added a cornerback before that. You should have added veteran presence at the cornerback position before then. Now you're in a situation, if DJ Turner is out for the remainder of the season, you have to add a cornerback. Josh Newton has to play. As bad as Cam Taylor-Britt has been this season, guess what? Oh, well, he has to play. You got to figure something out. Are you going to call Xavier Howard back saying, hey, I know we brought you in recently, but now we're going to give you whatever. We need you out here. Are you doing that? And, is it all for naught if you're doing that? There are so many serious questions to be added, which is why I know people probably think I'm just like defending the guy, which is why I kind of go to bat for him a little bit. You lose Cam Sample, right? You lose him as a pass rusher, and then you do nothing to add to the pass rusher room. It's like, but a running back goes out. Zach Moss goes out after Chase Brown has started already overtaking him in the snaps a little bit. Chase Brown goes out. You go out, you add a running back, you add another running back as well. Like you trade for one. But why isn't the defense getting that same attention? You knew what the interior of the defense of line, the question marks were coming into the season. You knew what the issues were after your edge rusher went out. You knew what the questions were after you lost your starting cornerback, who beat out the guy in DJ Turner for the starting job. You knew what it was now after DJ Turner has gone out. But what are you doing to effectively make shit work? I'll be honest with you. I view this season as at a crossroads. I feel like the Bengals are at a crossroads with this season. And I'm going to be judging the next, couple of games just as well as the Bengals organization, or at least I hope the Bengals brass are judging it as well. We talked on State of the Jungle about, potential additions the Bengals can make in the offseason. I'd like to see Dejon Anthony, down the stretch here. I personally love to see that. I'd like to know what Tanner McLaughlin has. You want to make sure you leave no stone unturned going into the offseason. So if you don't make the playoffs like it's looking like right now, you at least know what you need to fix. The thing is, the Bengals are going to do what they always do. I have a funny feeling. They're going to go on a little bit of a run here. And they're going to win a couple of games. They're going to win a couple of games, man.
Okay.
I don't know if it'll be enough to get in the playoffs. But I think they're going to win a couple of games here. And I think what's going to happen is it's going to save asses.
I would hate that. If they got to the playoffs, I'm all in. I'm game. It's game on with me. I'm not going to be the guy to say, man,
yeah,
we're good there. Like, nah.
You want to see them do. You want to see them do well. But I'll be honest with you. if they miss the playoffs, there's no way you can bring Zach back.
That's how I feel.
There's no way you
I
can.
don't care if they go 9-8. See, last year, to me, his seat was a little hot because I kept on saying, well, I need to see him win without Joe Burrow. And he did that. And that was a big deal for me. Like, and that proved a lot to me, like down the stretch. Now, mind you, T. Higgins is doing crazy plays like this. And, you know, like, but that Colts game, people don't remember the same offensive line, no sacks.
Yeah.
Went under center. Had a real good, he called a real good game. The screen game was hitting. That was a Colts team that wasn't scrubs. And he had games like that down the stretch. And so I said, okay, I'm cool with Zach. I'm like, he ain't the greatest coach, but I can win with him.
Right.
Going into this season, watching the run game coordination, one of the things that people are talking about too, and I just saw a comment that said, Chase Brown and Mixon have the same production. You could have had both. Stop putting Chase Brown versus Mixon. Zach Moss was the Mixon replacement. And at the time, it was always talked about the money aspect of it. For $1.8 million more, and I'm not saying this because Zach Moss got hurt. That's unfortunate. But for $1.8 million more, you could have had both Mixon and Chase Brown and gone to the draft, drafted the succession plan. And why is that important? Because currently now, 11 weeks in, you're still looking for a running back that doesn't fumble, that can get you short yardage stuff. Oh, yeah, mind you, we're recording this on a Tuesday, the day right after we just watched Mixon go crazy. And what does he do? Short yardage runs, gets a tough one at the goal line, takes the next one, bounces out. You don't think that could have helped? I know that everybody likes to point to the defense, but in a game like the one that we just had, and there have been games like this throughout the season, when the run game started hitting, the 1-2 punch of a secondary runner, and this isn't the bigger, this is just one issue out of 1,000.
Right.
The short yardage, Bengals in 4th and inches, they still in shotgun. You ain't got nobody, you don't got not one running back that can get the running back to get the rock under center. You're doing trick plays and handing the ball off to Tanner Hudson on 4th and 1 last week, and y'all telling me y'all don't think a dude that currently has almost 1,000 all-purpose yards through 11 weeks couldn't have contributed to that? I don't know what the weird hate on like the mix. I think it's just because people were like, he was washed. And then now coming back to now, they're like, well, yeah, like why are we still talking about it? People like myself aren't trying to take a victory lap. I want everybody to understand one of the bigger issues with the Bengals in totality is I feel like our fans don't really celebrate our greats, and we're willing to move on from players. And then I'm arguing to people, why is it Willie Anderson one of the greatest offensive linemen of all time? It's because when he was playing, PFF wasn't in place. A lot of these other outlets weren't in place. And the fans do so much glazing on Nick Chubb and stuff and glazing all these other running backs when Mixon is literally, since he came into the National Football League since 2017, he leads McCaffrey, Kamara, Saquon, all of those dudes. He's second in in rushing yards and all-purpose yards, like in that list. But people will tell you with a straight face because of a lot of hearsay and all this other stuff that, oh yeah, he wouldn't have did that in the offense. He did it. He did it in a worse offensive line for all that time. Would he have done it in 2024? He didn't have to. All he had to do is be a 1-2 punch to Chase Brown. Now, mind you, that's just one route you can go. There are millions of routes to go. But Chase Brown is the singular running back. To me, long-term isn't sustainable. To me, there has to be another guy. And that's why I was talking about like the Khalil Herbert thing and all this other stuff. I get so angry at the people that are so dismissive of Mixon, but these are the same people that are arguing that the front office doesn't make the correct decisions. People online currently right now, outside of the Bengals fan base, are hammering the Bengals saying, you guys are idiots for not keeping Mixon. We know the context of why Mixon isn't here, and that makes sense. He's in a way better scheme, all these different things. But to delegitimize one of our greats is something that I am offended by. Because literally, if he puts together 2 more seasons, he has a Hall of Fame career, but we're saying that he wouldn't have worked with the coach that we don't even like. A scheme that we don't even like. Why are we taking up for a scheme that we don't like? In 2 years from now, we're talking about Mixon possibly having a Hall of Fame jacket. You could say, well, why are you harping on that? How come Jesse Bates gets brought up every single day? Jesse Bates and the Falcons got their ass whooped 38-6. Ain't nobody coming back online and saying, well, here's a bad game from Jesse Bates. It's so problematic to me within like the fans in that conversation. I don't get it, bro. Like, Mixon's one of the greats. I celebrate him just like anybody else. That if anybody's watching my Twitter, anybody that's really good that's put on a Bengals uniform, I'm always about that. Like, that's what my whole stick is. That's what I'm doing. It's not about I'm picking a person. I'm celebrating them, because if I don't do it, who will?
Right. The
same person that's telling you that Mixon went to work in the office, you the same person that's saying, how come we don't get no guys in the Hall of Fame? How come we don't get this guy? How come we didn't get Pro Bowl snubs? It's because of this. You don't do a good job of celebrating the current players that we have. Instead of celebrating, they were telling me about Nick Chubb. Mixon averaged more yards versus the Browns than Chubb ever did against the Bengals. All-purpose yards, over 120-something yards every single time we played them. But our fan base was conditioned to think that whatever. And we're still looking for a running back, but we gave away a franchise running back in the end of his peak for nothing. That's a problem, just like any other conversation that anybody has about the front office. Mixon doesn't get isolated from the conversation because it's a part of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, real quick, and just to kind of discuss too, like, people are saying, oh, he didn't fit the offense, can't focus on guys who are not here. I feel like that's part of the conversation that we're missing right now is, hey, what Mixon is showing, at least what we're on the same page, I'm pretty sure, is, hey, he's showing some flaws in this Bengals offense. For me, and this should show everybody why, and ask yourself the question, why is he looking good over there versus not here? And we could say, okay, he didn't fit the scheme. Okay. But are we confident in the scheme that you got going on here when you can't create a 3rd and 1 and a 4th and 1?
Can I just address something real quickly? Yeah. You're always in the comment section being, you disagree with a lot of things. I just want to address something real quickly here. You said they never talk O-line here, always ex-Bengals in skill positions. Meanwhile, Burrow, lucky he finished his season healthy. Here's what I'll say to that. If you want me to address the O-line, which I've addressed on State of the Jungle several times, we have to literally talk about the organization. The organization has a belief, and what that belief is, they don't believe in paying over double digit for interior offensive linemen. Any upgrade you're going to get in the interior offensive lineman position is not going to be one of these elite-esque offensive linemen. I know people are talking about Trey Smith. If he's potentially available, it's not happening. People are talking about these other guards. Unless the Bengals are willing to change their stripes organizationally, right, and they're willing to value the interior of the offensive line a similar fashion to how they value tackles, then guess what? You'll always get subpar to average guard play unless you draft a guy who performs very, very elite. And then, he winds up working out, which is why there were some fans that were hoping the Bengals drafted Jackson Power Johnson when he fell in the draft where he did, because you knew no interior offensive line help was coming, or nobody was coming to push Cordell Volson or push in Alex Kappa. Think about all the signings that they have made at the interior of the offensive line positions. Cordell Volson is a draft pick that came out of North Dakota State, right? You got Alex Kappa, who came from the Buccaneers. That was supposed to be a great piece for them to add on the interior of the offensive line. But if you look even at some of the additions that they made, Max Sharping to me wasn't a terrible interior offensive lineman. They let him walk up there. He was a good backup piece personally that I thought. But Cody Ford could have played tackle, could have played guard for them. They are willing to do the bare minimum at the guard position. There is a guard that sat out there. What's his name? That was drafted by the Denver Broncos.
Dalton Risner.
Dalton Risner sat out there. People were clamoring for the Bengals to potentially add him. He sat out there for weeks, and he didn't get picked up until damn near preseason. And guess what? The Bengals did nothing to address the interior of the offensive line position. This is not shocking to me. The reason why I never really give the interior of the offensive line so much of my attention is because it's like being a dead horse. That's not a position that they value, and it's always been that way. I have the pleasure of sitting and hanging out with some greats for the Bengals and talking with people. They, for whatever reason, value the tackle position. It's not for whatever reason. You look at the Bengals organization history, they've had some elite players at the tackle position. they've had some good guard play, but they've had some elite players at the tackle position. So when you have guys like Willie Anderson, guys like Andrew Whitworth, right? Guys like Anthony Munoz, it changes. It changes things a little bit for you. You think, oh my God, we've had a history of all these great left tackles and right tackles. We're going to value that position. We're going to value that position over and over and over again. They've yet to really allow themselves to really invest in the guard position and really allow that to work for them. But it's a fundamental change that needs to happen within the organization. You can 100% go out there and let's say, I know there are people out there that say, hey, let's move on from T. Higgins. That money that you're allocating to a T. Higgins, you can go after a Trey Smith. But the question is, will the organization do that?
What about a tag and trade for one of those guys? Which that's been brought up because all this time I've been saying a tag and trade for a first or second round pick is what I want. Mm-hmm. But I think they have a really good chance of for a competent front office of executing a tag and trade for a player of impact. Right. T. Higgins for Jeff Simmons level player.
Yes.
That's who I would want. I know that's not offensive line, but
let's go a step further. I'm being honest with y'all. Like, you have to look at how the team thinks. They were not willing to go all in on the offensive line until they saw Joe Burrow carry them to a Super Bowl with that offensive line. And Mike Brown, I remember when he did that speech in the park in Cincinnati, he said, we're going to try to do some things to help out our quarterback to keep him upright. Bro, they went to a Super Bowl with what's his name? Trey Hopkins, Jackson Carman. Who was the right guard for the Bengals? The other guy, Isaiah Prince was the right tackle, and the right guard.
Quentin Spain, Xavier Su'a-Filo.
Yeah, they went to a Super Bowl with that as the offensive line, right? They saw to themselves, hey, if we fix the tackle position, which is why they threw at the money they threw at Orlando Brown, which is why they threw the money they did at Orlando Brown. They go into it with the thought process, if we could have some really good tackle play, then we'll be in a good spot. Which is why I always say the Bengals, they drafted Kevin Zeitler years and years ago, right? But what happened? He walked out the door. They didn't pay him. He's still playing at a very good level. Back-to-back great games he just had in year what now for him, right? To me, it's like, hey, are you going to put an emphasis? Yes, Akeem Adeniji, yes. Are you going to put an emphasis on fixing the entire offensive line? You can't be average in the interior. You can't be average in the interior. Because right now, guess what? The Bengals have to change with the league. The Bengals have to change with the time. The league right now is telling you that the guard position is equally as important as the tackle position, which is why you see guards getting paid $18 million a year, which is why when people said, hey, Joe Thuney to the Bengals, it was never going to happen because the Bengals are never going to allocate the resources to make that happen. Now, will they change their stripe? That's going to be the question. The Bengals have always valued wide receivers, cornerbacks, tackles. That's what they're willing to do. Now, this offseason, they have a very, very interesting opportunity in front of them. They have the ability, let me be clear, they have the ability to go out there and really try and upgrade this roster. I agree with Zim. I agree with the sign and trade. I believe they need to operate as an organization that is trying to contend. But in all likelihood, you're going to see one of two things happen. You're going to see them franchise tag T. Higgins and not trade him. Or you're going to see him let him walk. That's what gets them into the water they are. This will be the most optimal time to tag and trade T. Higgins because the wide receiver class isn't that great. This will be the most optimal time to do that. So that way you're not losing out on a star-studded receiver. But fundamentally, things need to change within the Bengals organization if we're going to be honest with ourselves. And I'll be honest with you, I personally think that, yes, I agree with you, Wes Whodey. Football starts within the trenches. An upgrade within the trenches need to happen, which is why I'll say this. I think that if the Bengals miss the playoffs, you need to move off of Zach Taylor, because I think that the message that sends to the entire roster is it doesn't matter if Joe Burrow is healthy or not. We won't win with this coach. We won't win this. Understand, the Bengals had a last place schedule this season, and they have 4 wins to show for it on the season. That's abysmal. It's egregious. And you know why? A lot of people say, hey, you know what? Well, Marvin Lewis lasted this long. Understand, Marvin Lewis brought the Bengals out of so many bad years. Mike Brown and Marvin Lewis were super close. I don't get the notion that Zach Taylor and Mike Brown are like best of friends. It's also a gap, an age gap, a massive age gap. But I'll tell you what could speak to the Bengals. You know, people often talk in this town about, hey, you know, you hurt the Bengals on the pocket, still listen.
Yeah.
Well, the Bengals are already being hurt in the pocket because they're spending a ridiculous amount of money on a star quarterback who's playing at MVP level right now. It's an MVP season. And they're going to have to come out of pockets 30 plus million for Jamar Chase as well. And then you have Trey Hendrickson. Yeah, like damn near 4. You have your star pass rusher in Trey Hendrickson also asking for a contract. Well, guess what? The Bengals are already allocating those resources and those dollars to these said players. When you have a mediocre product on the football field, what does that say to the organization? Changes are needed. And I'll go a step further. I don't know if Duke Tobin is safe either.
Yeah.
That's just what I think.
You know they've been throwing around. What's the dude name? And his name like Trey Smith or something?
Trey Brown.
Trey Brown.
Yeah.
Everybody's been throwing that name around to say, like, I think that will be like the closest thing that we would get to anything front office related. And then I don't know if people have been paying attention to the NFL allowing a lot of these investment companies and stuff like that being a part of it. And I think the Bengals should be all over that. And I think that's the only thing, like, as a Bengal fan, I think you could hope for. I did want to, like, from the coaching standpoint, we could get into some options because you know I'm very big on I hate the guy that has fired this guy, but you don't have a plan. I've been thinking about this long and hard. Now, this is a name that I don't think that the Bengals could get, right? In it or whatever, right? And you and Daniel are way more privy to college football than me. But a lot of times, like, you know how I came on here and I shared my story and all these different things, and I think that resonates with a lot of people. I'm not saying that Zach Taylor doesn't have a story, but if you have a story that can hit home with these young 20-something-year-old young men, millionaire dudes or whatever, I think that will hit. Deion Sanders, right? Oh. Check this out. Not that I think that Deion Sanders would be the coach, but the mold of in the AFC North confidence, somebody that has a story that can motivate men, right? Tomlin, right? Harbaugh, like these are motivators. And there's just the face of this. If you look at it, we're not going to talk politics, but if you look at like the election, the president candidate, the president itself isn't, you know, he has to create the cabinet and all the different positions around them. And those are the smartest people on the planet to me, is the ones that are the people that are smart enough to pick the best people around them. Deion, if you go look, he went and grabbed Rob Livingston, our secondary coach from the Bengals, brought him to the college circuit like one of the best, right? That was a guy at the time that was supposed to his name was floating around for defensive coordinator stuff. Deion nabbed him and got him to get to Colorado. He also, one thing that I've talked about with Willie Anderson a lot is a lot of players or former players have a lot to input and can help out. And Deion went and grabbed Warren Sapp. And Warren Sapp is very instrumental into what they do up front when Colorado is a lot smaller. Now, I'm not saying that it has to be Deion. I think that somebody like Flores, with the combination of Flores and like Vrabel or somebody like that as a D coordinator, which I don't think he would probably do, that would be more my choice. I think the Ben Johnsons of the world are very sexy in names to me, but I think that the Bengals pockets won't allow it. And I guess the argument would be that with Deion too, right? And that's why I said not, but somebody in that mold, like somebody and the reason why I said Flores, because it's got to be very, very distinctive. The coach has to just want to really coach, not be a part of, I am the brain trust of Bill Belichick with those awful drafts that he did. You know what I mean? It has to be somebody in that mold that just wants to coach and get a shot. Remember, Zach Taylor was like that, but he was just thankful to be there. Yeah. Flores is like, just give me a shot. I know I'm a head coach in the NFL. I don't need to be paid the highest paid, and I'm a great motivator of men. I have experience, and I have an attitude, and I have something that could work in the AFC North. To me, that would be my number one choice is Brian Flores. Like, and I've thought about it a lot. And then how he builds the cabinet around him and the folks that are around him. It has to be kind of like somebody how Dion, what Dion just did. Coaching really, really matters. In a 2-win team to now being an 8-2 team, you can hate him all you want. He was smart enough to go get the players that are bigger up front because the trenches I know were little as hell last year. He was smart enough to do that. He gives his quarterback and Travis Hunter, he gives them confidence every single week, and they believe that they're the best players in the world. He doesn't shy away from that. You got Hunter posing Heisman, whatever, every single week. That's Jamar Chase to me. That's Jamar Chase. Like Cam Taylor-Britt and all these guys that like to talk that talk and whatever, that's what they are. But you need a coach that holds them accountable to it. And that's who I would pick. I wanted to ask you guys, who would you think if you had a chance? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
No, I love this. So I wrote down a couple of names here, and I'm happy we're having this conversation. I wrote down a bunch of names here, and I'm going to tell you who I think is the most likely candidate, and it might shock you. If the Bengals remove off of Zach Taylor, which I think is on the table if they miss the playoffs. So I wrote down some names: Brian Flores, Bill Belichick, Kevin Stefanski, Kyle Shanahan if he is out the door in San Francisco. I have an department, which is Joe Brady, Eric Bieniemy, Bobby Slowick, and then obviously you have the sexy name in Ben Johnson. I think the most realistic choice here is Bill Belichick. I do.
Bill Belichick.
Yeah. And let me tell you why.
Okay.
He comes in automatically with a staff assembled. He already comes in automatically with a staff assembled. Him and Mike Brown already have a very good relationship, right? They dealt with each other. Bengals were one of the only primary teams that traded with the New England Patriots during their time. Bill Belichick has spoke glowingly of Mike Brown's father, glowingly about Mike Brown's father and Paul Brown and how great of a football mind he had. And he talked about how his love of how the Bengals sort of operated in their first-class family organization. Something that's interesting too is here, Bill Belichick wanted Darren Simmons to be Darren Simmons already I'm sorry, Bill Belichick wanted to work with Darren Simmons. Bill Belichick actually tried to get Darren Simmons to be the special teams coordinator in New England once the Bengals moved over from Marvin Lewis, and the Bengals blocked it. I think Bill Belichick makes the most sense here because you would be able to keep your longtime special teams coordinator in place in Darren Simmons. You already know Josh McDaniels is coming as the offensive coordinator. Matt Patricia is coming as the defensive coordinator, or his son might come as well and help. I really believe Bill Belichick, and you also get past the Duke Tobin thing. I don't love the way Bill Belichick drafts. I don't love his organizational control, but I think that there is a realistic possibility in which Bill Belichick would want the opportunity to coach a Joe Burrow. And let me be honest with you, after this fiasco of hiring a new coach, I don't think a Ben Johnson is realistic for the Bengals. I don't think the Bengals are going to go out there and hire a first-time head coach. Anybody that the Bengals look to hire, it will be somebody who has done it before. I believe that wholeheartedly. Regardless of people think, he would bring structure here, he would bring know-how, and you have to ask yourself: do you think Josh McDaniels, not the head coach, but the play caller, is better than a Zach Taylor as a play caller? And I think the answer unequivocally is yes.
Yes.
I think you say that. I think you lose something at the defensive coordinator position with Matt Patricia versus a Lou Anarumo personally, but I still think you have that. I think the Bengals defense probably changes to a 3-4 defense stylistically under Matt Patricia. It'll look different. It would really look drastically different. But to me, I just don't know if I understand Joe Burrow, and I believe Joe Burrow will have his hand in who the new head coach would be if they were to move off of Zach. And I just don't know if a Joe Brady does it for the team. You got to ask yourself, how much is it Joe Brady, or how much is it just having a freaking freak at the quarterback position in Josh Allen? And those are the honest questions you have to ask yourself. You have to ask yourself, is he ready?
Brady he did his thing at LSU with him.
He did, but he was the passing game coordinator. He wasn't calling the plays. That was Steve Eichenheimer. And I think that kind of gets lost in it because he's a young guy. He was super young at the time. And it was, I think he did wind up calling a play one point in time when Steve had a loss in his family. But I think that there's so much. I think there's so much that goes into the new potential head coach and stuff like that. And you have to ask yourself, how much of this roster are you losing? I think that it would be losing a Troy Walters would suck personally for the receiver room, right? He's a great guy. Would he want to move on to a potential offense coordinator position for all the great work he's done at the wide receiver position here? I don't know. Bobby Slowick is another name that's been thrown out there.
The under center game doesn't match up with Joe though. Right. Like he's got to go under center. Like all of his stuff is all off the play action.
Right. Guys, and I hope y'all know, like I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart, I really don't know if Zach survives this season if they miss the playoffs. And I'm not just, saying that because we're on a show and I want you guys to tune in. The fact of the matter is Bill Belichick wants to coach again. He tried to coach last year. This isn't a thing of he didn't want to coach in the National Football League. He has a chip on his shoulder. He wants to prove that he could win again without Tom Brady, just like Tom Brady proved that he could win without him. I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't mind. The media probably would hate him, but I wouldn't mind having a guy who has a couple of Super Bowls to his name. I wouldn't mind having a guy that brings that championship acumen and a guy that we already know Mike Brown has a lot of respect for. I think that right now what this organization needs is structure from the head coaching position. You need somebody that's able to lead effectively, and somebody that's able to field winners. That's just my thoughts.
Daniel.
Yeah, man. I'm with you. I think so.
Are you laughing at Bill Belichick?
No. I'm with him on that actually. Just to break down. So for me, I'm with you. I think the overall sentiment, I kind of went back and forth with this. If you're getting rid of Zach Taylor, you need a culture guy. You need a guy who's done it before. And I think that's where the Bobby Slowick, Cliff Kingsbury, the Ben Johnson, I'm okay off of those guys for now, just because I need somebody that's going to step in and the locker room, boom, respects. I need somebody, because respectfully, this is a team, any dude who wants a head coaching gig, obviously you have to deal with the organization, but your eyes light up when you see Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And that's what this Bengals problem is. It's about the organization. So I think that if I'm looking at these head coaching gigs, I really like the Brian Flores. I think that Brian Flores is a guy that could step in here. I like Mike Vrabel. Those are two guys that are, really well respected that could come in. And I look at the Dan Campbell situation, right? Dan Campbell went in there. He was on the same page with the GM, but he was a rah-rah guy. He's the guy that the locker room rallied behind. The Bill Belichick thing, the only issue with that is, will the organization be okay with putting him in the front office? And if they are, you step in. We saw what he did with Tom Brady, and we've discussed Joe Burrow and the similarities to a Tom Brady. We've discussed
They might be right up their alley. I'm sorry to cut you off. It might be right up their alley, though, right? Because Bill is in a situation where he gained that autonomy over time. He didn't just come in right with that. That's why Nick Castellanos left to become the Texans. I'm sorry, Nick Caserio. I said Nick Castellanos. Nick Caserio left to go be the Texans general manager because he wanted a raw opportunity. The Bengals don't have a general manager right now as it is. Yeah, they don't. So if Bill came in, he'd be working in tandem with someone. It wouldn't be a thing of, but Duke Tobin, right? Let's call it what it is. Duke Tobin's not the general manager of the Bengals. He's the director of player personnel. It's very easy for the Bengals to slot somebody in as the general manager without moving on from a Duke Tobin. Because you could just say, oh, Duke was never the general manager. He was the director of player personnel. We're adding to the front office organizational structure. We're adding someone with the general manager title. It's very, very simple. And that's the way it works, right? Duke Tobin could take a step back from being the lead man, because let's call it right now, the block is hot right now for Duke Tobin.
Block is hot. Can I tell you, that this is, when this conversation just started, right? Yeah. I think the whole gloom and doom, like, oh, it's over, bro. Like, let me be clear. We got Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. I think they get the deal done. I love football. So, like, the concept of me, being very frustrated and saying different things that whatever, I'm not here to fault the guy or woman that says, man, this team sucks. I quit on the team. Like, I hear you. But even this conversation that we're having, I could have it for 12 hours. I love the Bengals that much. And that's how that's my therapy for, like, football. It's like, this conversation has layers to it. You sold me on Bill Belichick. When I came into this conversation, you sold me on Bill Belichick already. And I started thinking back, Bill be doing that show with Ocho
Mm-hmm.
and like their banter between each other on the NFL network or whatever.
Yep.
He said some things about the Bengals offense, and he said some things a couple different times. Him and what's bro with those big old teeth, the Jets' old defensive coordinator. Oh my
Rex
God.
Ryan?
Yeah, Rex Ryan. Those two always have a lot of thoughts on the Bengals or whatever. You know what I mean? And by you saying that, and then I remember the dude that covers NFL and NBA, the white guy that there's the reporter, I can't think of his name now. He's like a Bulls fan. But he's hinted at Bill Belichick as well too.
Mm-hmm. Bill Johnson. Bill. I know you're talking about.
Bill something.
Yeah, I know you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, Bill whatever. He's hinted at Bill Belichick to the Bengals too. And I guess in my mind, I was like, I think his drafts are so bad.
Mm-hmm.
If I could get past that part, just the coaching aspect of we're no nonsense. Let's get it, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. Like to me, when I see people crash out and be like, "Man, I'm done with this team," like, bro, you got it. Like, I'm excited about like the conversation, and I'm not faking that. Like, I'd rather the Bengals be in playoff contention. Let's rattle all 6. But the conversation and just like what we're having right now, yeah, Bill Simmons. That's fun to me. Like, I don't know. I just like I like the back and forth of like this, because like I said, Flores would be a choice and everything like that I think will work. I think he's got the previous experience and stuff like that. I think it will work. But the Bill Belichick one is like, forget all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Should we play whatever? Should this guy play? Like, Bill's just like, this is what it is.
And if
you can't even really like,
you're coming in with the notion knowing that he's not like there's got to be some stuff in place already. There's got to be, hey, we're going in for a championship because this is his last stop. Ideally,
yeah.
He wouldn't be going in with the thought process. What? Let's talk about this.
Are you worried about his
upgrade?
Age?
Huh?
Are you worried about his age?
No.
74,
72. No, I ain't worried about his age. I think that the message grows stale at times. Andy Reid was in Philly for how long? And he went to Kansas City, found new life. I don't think it's an age thing. I think he was worn out. There was a struggle with Robert Kraft over the Tom Brady, moving on from Tom Brady, who wanted to give Jimmy Garoppolo some more time at the time. But you're giving Bill Belichick another elite quarterback at the later stages of his career. And a lot of stuff already set up with a great wide receiver. That's more. This Bengals team will be more talented than any Patriots team that Bill coached in the last 4 years.
I was having a good chat with my friend because I have some thoughts on the game that I think will probably get me banned from Bengals, like whatever, because I'm very tough on Burrow. And I think he's the greatest quarterback. Like, I think he's the best quarterback in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that stands out to me, you can't have a bad defense, bad special teams, and you can't have all of those things. And so all this time I've been fighting this narrative where people be like, Joe Burrow not clutch, and I'll be telling the opposition, like, are you crazy? We draw down the field and da-da-da. And I started having that conversation in my head, and all of that was Joe Burrow setting up. It's just, oh my God, it's so crazy. It's just like how I was saying, people that are the smartest people in the world are smart enough to hire people that are smarter than them, and the people around them. Joe Burrow is the greatest alley-ooper, John Stockton to Malone, greatest whatever you want to say in the history of football, maybe, like already, right? Because he made Evan McPherson, he set him up all these times. If you think about it, my version of clutch, I'm like, man, just give me points on the board. You know what I mean? And he always did that in the playoffs. The Titans game, he sets them up. Chiefs game, like that's clutch. It gets no clutcher than that. But the biggest flaw I think that is kind of overlooked this season is the mechanics of the kicking in general and how that coincides with Evan McPherson. You could just say Evan McPherson sucks. But I do think that there's a correlation with, I was there at that Steelers week 1, 2022 game. He starts off the game, he kicks a 59-yard field goal, no problem. Soon as Clark Harris and Huber Soon as they get hurt and everything, I never felt like he's been the same. Now, hitting inside the 50, he had always done. But he had never been the same to me. When he got the extension, I got cooked online because I said, did we consider him a top 10? I started naming all the kickers. And everybody's like, you idiot, like, get out of here. And I'm like, I'm just telling you, I don't feel as confident. Bill Belichick will make sure, if y'all know his background, he will make sure that special teams and whatever's going on, not even just Evan McPherson, he would set up Burrow in the same spot that how Burrow did in 2021 and 2022. He would make sure that he sets up these alley-oops because in the game, I want to talk about a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Burrow sets up 2 good alley-oops. Those are 2 50-yard drives. And he sets them up with a great alley-oop, and McPherson just misses both those kicks. If he makes one of those kicks, there's an argument you probably win. If he makes both, I think we win. There's not enough time on the clock, like all these different things like that, right? And that's a big problem right now for us, and I think Bill Belichick solves that.
Bill Belichick understands that football is won up in the trenches. He understands that. Dante Scarnecchia, who was his offensive line coach in New England, and they've consistently got guys like Joe Tooney paid. So many different guys paid that played with the Tom Brady. And I think that Bill did his best he could have done with Mac Jones at quarterback position. But make no mistake about it, Bill still has
Think about him with Cam Newton. That was a terrible roster.
Yep.
Won 7-8 games with that roster.
Yep. And you know what he said also? What's been on record saying Bill's so close to breaking Vince Lombardi's all-time winning record. He is so close to being the all-time winningest coach in National Football League history. He's already considered the greatest coach in NFL history, right? The modern day era, at least. But I think that you get a guy that will be able to match. Listen, Tom Brady wasn't always this goofy, loving, funny guy, right? He was intense at points and times to try to win a championship. I feel like Joe Burrow is at this point where he's very much like that, where he's very intense and he wants to win. And I feel like having a coach like Bill Belichick that is on the similar mindset, that ain't changing, that wants to win, I think that it helps in a lot of ways. This isn't a guy that sucked or had some winning seasons. He had over 20 some odd years with the New England Patriots and brought in 6 championships? 6 championships together. 6 championships together. And you know what it's already getting. You know you're getting Bill Belichick as the coach for the Bengals for the next 4 years max, maybe. And then you can already start working on who his next predecessor might be because he's not planning to stay in the game that long. The way that I see it, I think that it's crazy to think. One thing I want to give Zach Taylor credit for, too. There was a point in time where this job was undesirable. There was a point in time where this job wasn't looked at the way that it is. But the changes that they've made over time has really shifted the thought process when it comes to the Bengals, which brings me to this point. I feel like, a couple of years ago, you would think that Bill Belichick would be a pipe dream. But he sat down. He sat out the season. He watched the landscape of the NFL play out. You have to ask yourself, what job, if the Bengals job were to become, this is all predicated on the Bengals moving off of Zach Taylor, what job would really catch his attention? There's also, outside of Zach Taylor, there's only been one coach that has really had Andy Reid's numbers his entire career. Bill Belichick. There's also only been one coach that's notoriously.
Don't get me you get me hyped up over here, man.
I'm just be honest.
I don't want to do this with you. Don't you get me hyped up like this week 11 and then
I think that Joe Burrow and Bill Belichick would feed fucking families. And I'll go a step further. I think that there's no other job that would be enticing for a Bill Belichick other than Cincinnati. There, I said it. I think that there will be no other job that'd be more enticing for Cincinnati.
Daniel,
I think the ones that he
who's clipping stuff right here. I need that clip right there. And I also need the guy that says, Matt cost me $1K off a parlay, you little bitch. I need those 2 things clipped because to me, that's the show. Man. What are we doing there? Like that's the whole show right there. Like Bill Belichick will feed fucking families, and this guy is angry that Matt cost him $1K off his parlay.
Listen, all I'm going to say, man, is y'all are crazy to think it's not tampering. It's to think that Mike Brown can't have a conversation with Bill Belichick. Now, right now, he can talk to the guy right now. The family understands they want to win a championship for Mike. Mike Brown's about to turn 90. They understand it's now. They need to figure out a way to win now. I don't believe Zach Taylor has the leash that that Marvin Lewis has, and I'll go a step further. And I don't think that Joe Burrow would be against a Bill Belichick coming to the coach of the Bengals. I think that it would be you get the greatest head coach of all time with a quarterback that's in his prime, that's playing at an elite level. It makes too much sense. Give me Bill Belichick on the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think the Bengals will be in a very good spot.
It's over.
That's just where I stand. But we're using the next few weeks as evaluation period to see what happens. But if the Bengals miss the playoffs, I think Bill Belichick is on a one-way trip to Cincinnati. Personally, I think it makes sense for a lot of reasons, and I think the relationship and a lot of the stuff that goes into it, it makes a lot of sense. But I don't think Bengals fans should just be clamoring for it's the AFC North. It's the AFC. That's one thing I want to say. It's the AFC North. You don't got to get too sexy and have a Ram style offense and all this kind of stuff. You're just trying to win football games. And Bill understands offense, defense, and special teams. You have concerns about the Bengals special teams, that shit will get corrected under Bill Belichick. The Bengals defense, that will get corrected under Bill Belichick. The only biggest question is going to be the organizational structure. And if that gets figured out, I think that the Bengals can do a lot of winning. Stop being so hung up, guys. For the fans, don't be so hung up on the young up and coming coaches. We've done that already. We did that with Zach Taylor. He got 2 years left on his deal. He's on a 3-year deal, 4-year deal. He's paying $4.5 million. That's chump change.
See, the thing that sold me to when you were talking about Bill, right? Mm-hmm. It's the people that come in with him too.
Yes.
So it's
they won championships. All with that structure, you're getting an offensive coordinator who has 5 championships, a defensive coordinator that has 4 championships, a head coach that has 6.
That's seen it all. Yeah. Like Ben Johnson, as great as I think he might start off the season. Remember how the Ravens just started off in the season? That's not even a great example. Remember the Saints start off in the season and they go 3-4 weeks and they're like, whoa, this is a historic offense. Everybody wants to hire the kid. Now, nobody's even talking about the Saints because eventually you get figured out. Belichick and the brain trust and the people around him with Josh McDaniels and people like that, even though I would hate Josh McDaniels as a head coach, but as a play caller and picking plays, I think Zach Taylor's playbook is fine.
I think that you're getting one of the worst, one of the least talented coaches, I would say, and situational coaching, which I believe is what separates good and great coaches.
Absolutely.
I think Bill Belichick is the best situational coach.
Absolutely. That's where we're at with when people, that's exactly where I'm at was at. And I've said this, I hold this against him and I don't hold it. I think a lot of people hold agendas against people, but they hold it in and they don't tell people that. I hold the Super Bowl against Zach Taylor a lot. They're running the ball over 6 yards a clip. Joe Burrow hurts his knee, but Zach is still throwing the football. And we lose the Super Bowl the way that we lost in the game. And I've had the privilege of talking to a guy with the Rams. And one thing that he said to me, he's no longer on the Rams, but he was on the Rams. And he played for the Rams at that time. He said, a week after that, he finally texted me. The first thing he said? I don't know why y'all stopped running the football. Mm-hmm. And I never forgot that. And then so when we go forward to the Philly special, Thursday night Ravens game, and you go to Packers game 2021, you go to the Ravens game this time running 3 plays like hot Joe Burrow. All of it, I told you, I've been evaluating the whole time. And I've been reserving my opinion for these moments so that I could say, you know what? I have a big enough sample size. I know his value. You hit it right on the head with the PR stuff. I've been saying that Zach Taylor is a great customer service agent, but eventually it's just time to move on. And I think the Bengals are at that spot. And if they don't move fast, you could learn from a lot of other teams. When Dungy, when it was time for him to switch over and they had to go and make that change and the Colts did their thing or whatever, it just was time. And a lot of people didn't like the move. And there could be an argument that Zach could kind of hang around, even if he went 9-8, there'd be an argument for that. But that's not the standard. Right. Joe Burrow, the second time that we won that AFC North, he came to the podium, and I don't forget certain things. I don't forget what me and you talked about yesterday, Malik. Mm-hmm. But I remember certain things that Joe Burrow said to the podium. He came to that podium and he said, that's the standard. Like that's the minimum. That's what we should be doing every year. And I never forgot that.
Mm-hmm.
And even if the Bengals were to sneak into the playoffs, going by how bad this season has gone, it's not all Zach Taylor's fault. I'm not placing all blame on him, whatever. That's just not acceptable. I'm very consistent with what I believe. I feel like Joe Burrow is the best quarterback. I feel like Jamar Chase arguably might be the best player in the whole entire league. In order for me to go forth with my beliefs and convey these different things, I need the pieces in place every single time. And that's just what it is. In winning in the gray areas of winning and losing, as a community, we could talk about the context. I did want to hit on this game really quick, on the Chargers game.
One thing before you go, I just want to say this. Everybody has this notion that New England is some big city or big town because of how much winning they did over time. I don't know if you've been in New England. New England's a very small town, very, very small town. The stadium literally smacks you right in the face. It has some of the most brutal winters I've ever seen, by the way. Cold I've never experienced before in my life. But it's there's not a city. There's like little bars and like it's Cincinnati's more of a city. So Bill Belichick was able to help turn that into this global thing where people from all walks are around, the United States and even some parts of the world become Patriots fans. And he took a small market team in New England and turned them into this powerhouse. You know who else is a small market team? The Cincinnati Bengals. You know who could benefit from having a Bill Belichick with the new stadium coming up and all this stuff like that? And a quarterback that wants to win quite like no other. I don't think there's a quarterback in the league right now that has the mentality of a Joe Burrow, maybe outside of Lamar Jackson. I genuinely don't know who else Bill would rather be the head coach for if the opportunity came to pass. But Cincinnati is a small market team, very similar to how New England was when he took it over, that wants to win. To me, Bill Belichick to Cincinnati makes too much sense. But I know you want to touch on the game, Zim.
I just wanted to say this.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I phrase this correctly. All of these things are true about what we've hit on with the front office. We've hit on coaching,
Mm-hmm.
all these different things. Our team kind of reminds me of some of those old Drew Brees teams where he throws for 5,000 yards and the defense is awful. They don't do anything. They get hosed. You remember when they finally do put together a roster,
Mm-hmm.
for the draft, they have the season where they get the stupid call in the playoffs and it cheats them out or whatever. But prior to that, it reminded me a lot of this, right? But nobody cares. Nobody cares. When you lose, nobody cares. And when the Bengals were 3-0 on Pat Mahomes, nobody cared, right? There's no context. We just said Joe Burrow's better than Pat Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Now, Chiefs fans probably came back and were like, well, the call right there, the offensive line, the defense, all these different things. Like, none of these things work, right? Herbert, he had all these bad defenses. We said he's nowhere near Joe Burrow. Mm-hmm. I mean, bro, like, get out of here. He ain't even won a playoff game. Like, whatever. Dude threw for 5,000 yards, right? I feel like it's very funny when I look at this season. I'm the biggest Joe Burrow fan in the world. But there are these moments in this season, and I want to preface this by saying this. We wouldn't be where we're at in this season. We wouldn't even have the 4 wins that we had without Joe Burrow. None of this is Joe Burrow's fault. The front office is putting behind the chains. The defense is putting behind the chains. All of this stuff said. Game, and mind you, he's gotten us back in a game that we shouldn't be down in. 27-27. Score tied. 12 minutes left. Wins and losses. And you could do that with whatever you want. Like, you could say, oh, well, I mean, that was the coach. I mean, interior offense. Hey, the history of football says that we watch football and we go to who won and who lost. Chargers fans waking up today and they're saying, yeah, we 2-0 versus Burrow. He ain't like that. We know that Burrow outplayed him. And at the end of the game, though, Herbert, our offense had 3 chances. They didn't do anything with it. Herbert then gets the opportunity to cooks us with the Lad McConkey play, does other things, and goes and wins the game. I just want to state that when people are giving the excuses for Burrow, like saying, well, the totality of his season. I mean, bro, he can't be perfect. He's doing everything. He's got 3,000 yards. He's only got 4 interceptions. Nobody cares. Only people that do care are people like me that are willing to listen to it and Bengals fans. At the end of the game, it's going to be who won and who lost. And I just stress that a lot because I think that it's not fair, but it's the rules that we all created. It's the rules that how we watch football. And to now deviate from that and say, no way you're blaming Joe Burrow. Not blaming Joe Burrow, but I'm paying him to be the very best quarterback in the National Football League. I got the ball tied up 7 minutes. No touchdown. No scores, whatever. Evan McPherson sells. I talked about how bad the special teams are. I will say that. But going into those drives, I immediately tweeted out, ain't no way in hell I'm letting Evan McPherson, I'm not letting Evan McPherson kick the field goal. People be like, well, I mean, he gotta hit the field goal at that spot. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not even putting Evan McPherson out there on the field. So I don't know how you want to do it. We could look at the whole entire season. We go Patriots, week 1, minute 30-something seconds left on the scoreboard. Joe Burrow 3 and out. Chiefs game, up 2 scores. End of the game, fumbles the ball, gives the ball back to the Chiefs, has the ball again. Yoshi does have a drop. He then gets the ball and then gives it back to them. They forfeit 16 us. Then we go to the Ravens game. We up 7 points. All you need is a field goal, really win it, throws a pick. Go to the next Ravens game. Zach kills us, runs the 3 runs or whatever. I would like Burrow to go and cook right there. My point is that when this is all said and done and it's 2026, 2027, we could go to the stats on Burrow. We could say everything that he did great in this season. He might lead the league in yards and touchdowns this season. But anybody that's a student in the game is going to look at the end of these games and they're going to remember any of the context that people are providing right now. They're going to say, did you win or did you lose?
Right. Wow. Zim, we just embarked on this journey, obviously doing these shows together, man. We've been live for an hour and over 40, I think, right now.
Oh, well, I came on.
Yeah.
We're
almost at that. Well, maybe an hour 30.
You were on 40. You were on 40 before I got on.
Yeah, we're almost at the 2-hour mark. This is the longest sit down with Malik Wright morning show ever. Ever. And we need to start doing more morning shows like this and talking things through and having conversation. Hell, there's a lot to talk about, a lot of stuff to get into. But man, make sure y'all follow Zim, man. Make sure y'all follow Zim. Yeah, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that we talked this much through it. You know what's crazy? I still feel like we can keep going. There's a lot of stuff that I still want to say right now too, but I'm not going to for the sake of time. But Zim, I appreciate you, brother, man. We're gonna have you back on again shortly. Obviously, maybe we'll like try to preview the upcoming game against the Steelers when.
Yeah, we got to do something. It's fun, man. I love talking football, man. I think that sometimes on Twitter, real quick. Sometimes on Twitter, you'll say something and people will be super dismissive. You idiot, like you bozo. But when you get a platform like this and you get to chat and all these things, you have a chance to talk about it. And I feel like we're all adults. Well, I think people are in here adults. I think we have an opportunity to talk about different things. Like you talked about your Bill Belichick one. You kind of sold me on it. You know what I mean? And there are different things I probably said during the show that you probably don't agree with. But I think as a community, one of the things that we've been doing is pushing great conversations. And that's what it's about. If you're dismissive of the conversation and you just calling someone a bozo or casual because they don't agree with you, that's not football discourse. And I talk ball. And
I agree.
I think that you don't have to agree with stuff I'm saying, But we're here to have this conversation, and that's what football is about. That's what talking ball is about.
And I also will say to the fan base the same thing I said to y'all before the trade deadline. People told me, Malik, you must be new. You must not really be a Bengals supporter. This team doesn't make trades. The fan base has much more power than y'all realize. I see people in the comment section saying Zach Taylor's not going anywhere. Are you sure about that? Because I'm not buying into that notion. What I will say is keep pushing the agenda forward. If this team does not make the playoffs, heads need to roll. And y'all should be the loudest party because the Bengals do peep what's on social media. I know that because I get text messages, I get DMs, I get the whole 9 yards. So I'm telling you, they pay attention to what you guys say, to what this fan base feels. They have never tried to be more connected to their fan base than what they are right now, which is why they've gone on all these campaigns they've done. Use your voice. Speak out. Do not settle for the norm. This isn't 1990s. This isn't the 80s. This is the early 2000s. This is the Marvin Lewis-led Bengals. This is the team that has allocated so much money towards their franchise quarterback in Joe Burrow, and they're about to do it to their franchise game-changing receiver in Jamar Chase, and they're going to have to do it to their pass rusher in Trey Hendrickson. I'm able to say things that people in the media that cover this team in the building can't say, and some of those people are my friends. So I'll continue to use my platform as a mouthpiece to tell y'all have a bigger voice than you think. I've never wanted to cover the Bengals and be credentialed media because I never wanted to lose the opportunity to speak my mind and say what it is that needs to be said. I don't care about protecting relationships and being fed information or any of that kind of stuff like that. I'm going to tell you like it is. And what needs to be said is this is mediocrity. Bengals fan base deserves more. This team deserves more. And guess what? Clock is ticking. Appreciate you, Zim, man. Looking forward to doing the show with you again next week, man.
Yes, sir. Who dey?
I'll see you, brother. Who dey? And that was Zim Whodey. Make sure you guys give him a follow on Twitter. Daniel, really quickly, give us your favorite bets for tonight, NBA, and then we're going to head out of here.
Yeah, so I think once again this was a very good show, and I was definitely excited to just talk Bengals and everything. We got a couple of big time games on the NBA slate. Once again, you guys can go to the QR code and check out our full best bets. We've got a huge game. The Boston Celtics. Our Boston Celtics are taking on the undefeated Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm not going to pick a side in this. I do think the Celtics come out here and win this, but I'm going to take two props in this game that I absolutely love. Donovan Mitchell is finally back for the Cavs. He was out for a couple games. He has cooked the Boston Celtics. He has 30 plus in 3 of his past 4 against the Boston Celtics. His points total right now is at 27.5. I think he gets 30 plus. This is a huge game. The Cavaliers know they got to step up for this game. 30 plus points is at plus 135. Give me Donovan Mitchell 30 plus points. And I also really go and I like Jason Tatum's rebounds in this game. I like his rebounds at 8 rebounds. You look at this team, the Boston Celtics, they have a center in Kada, but besides that, there's nobody else. But Jason Tatum, when he matches up against the team, a lot of times they'll actually have him guard Jared Allen, so he can have the switchability in the pick and rolls. Jason Tatum, 8 plus rebounds, something I absolutely love. And if I can give you guys one more, there's the Oklahoma City Thunder, our team. And this is what I target personally. I target matchups where there's injuries and there's a specific hole in a specific team. That's Oklahoma City Thunder. They're playing without their star center, Chet Holmgren, and they've given up the 3rd most rebounds to opposing centers because they don't have a big man. Their starting center is a 6'8" forward who plays center. So there's a guy on the San Antonio Spurs, Victor Wembanyama. I like his rebounds today. His line's currently not up, but I do like his rebounds. So anything you like, or you want to get out of here?
I think we're just going to head out of here.
Yeah.
I'll have my bets on the TWSN Patreon as well. Daniel's never second fiddle. That's my best friend. He's always my right-hand man. I appreciate y'all, man. I appreciate this conversation. And I feel like it's a conversation that needs to be had. Hopefully this is a good woosah moment for the entire fan base and realize that, your voice does matter. What you say matters. And we'll keep pushing the conversation forward. I do believe changes are on the horizon if they don't do something miraculous this season. And we'll just see what those changes are going to be. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning into our morning show. I appreciate y'all for giving me the platform to do what I love and talk sports and have this conversation with you guys. Hopefully you guys didn't mind the 2-hour live show. And just know we're going to keep bringing it to you guys over and over and over again. We appreciate you. Remember, there's only one way you should wake up, talk sports, have the conversation, be included in the conversation. And that is the right way. We appreciate y'all. See you guys tomorrow on State of the Jungle at 7 p.m.